Okay, let's enter the den of sin. We'll get to going. I don't think people understand exactly what I'm talking about here. More importantly, I don't think many of them give a shit. Not because I'm right or I'm wrong, but because people operate with a set of instructions. They operate with a set of instructions in their life given to them, as we've seen in the Reagan's Mall and the Fafness Mall. They operate with a set of instructions that seem to help move them forward with the positive perceptions of those around them they at the time admire or think highly of. That most closely suits and it creates a narrative in people's lives. It creates a standard operating procedure for them to navigate the world, their job, their relationships, so on and so forth. What many of them fail to understand is that SOP is quite likely the prime originator of much of the pain in their life. And so it fractures along the way, along this path of life, it begins to crack. And we cover it up with the wound, the anger of a wound, the resentment of a broken heart, or the fear of failure, or any other of a number of negative traits, until we come to a point in life where we finally figure out, hey, this set of instructions ain't working the way I thought it was supposed to. How come this is all the far that I've got? Because that's the fucking set of instructions you were given to get you that far in life. It's a unique opportunity in Asatru and probably many other faiths to find these individuals that have wandered outside of the pillars of Hercules, the edges of civilization, the boundaries of the chaos of our mind, either running from pain, because you got to understand, at first I didn't really want to agree with the statement that life is tough, but it is tough. Everyone you love is going to fucking die. People you love are going to go away. You're going to fail more often than you succeed. And you're going to have to deal with watching other people do things that you felt like you could do with ease. And yet all of a sudden, wait a minute, how come I don't understand? Yeah. Well, maybe it's you. And we see that addressed in the Lord in several places. And yet people never begin to comprehend that. They never begin to comprehend that. Well, maybe this set of operating instructions I got when I first got in here, maybe that's not the set of operating instructions that's going to move me to where I want to be. Maybe that's only going to serve to make somebody else feel like they're right and keep feeding my righteous indignation so I can kind of cover up the bullshit going on inside me instead of trying to figure out with these wonderful tools who I might really be, what I might be capable of, what I might become. You see it all the time. I look at the library I have of literature, some of it very old, some of it new, some of it inspired, some of it not. You ask yourself, why? Why have I read all of those books? Was it the cover art that fascinated me, that I felt that I must delve into the title in order to understand the origination of such a beautiful image? No. Invariably, what I'm looking for is powerful justification for the way I think. Well, why? Why do you want to do that? Well, because I want to feel like I'm more right than the next guy. Well, why? Why do you want to feel more right than the next guy? Well, I'll be a little bit more important than him, won't I? Well, if I know more than he does, I guess maybe, how so? Not once in this journey of heathenry that I've come through have I come across anyone other than myself that says, hey, why don't you just take a step back and take a look at them operating instructions you're using and Be honest with yourself about why they're not working. There's many solutions to it. There's many steps along that path. One is men need to become men again. There's a couple of guys out there that are exceptional in what they write. Said is you need to get a group of people to read. You stick with the winners. There's only one guy that I know of that does that quite well, and that's Justin. If I'm not mistaken, he has a new book out now called Tribalnomics. It might be worth checking out. We have an opportunity, and it's not going to be for the weak or the faint of heart to indulge in that kind of self-examination. Indeed, Sigurd didn't even begin to question much of what was going on until he slew a dragon that he was told was his enemy. When he was told that was his enemy and he had taken the life of this thing, he had to begin to understand, why did I do this? Well, you were given a set of operating instructions in your life by an individual who never dared to delve into the deeper meanings of exactly who he is. And here we come into Asatru. There's no pope. And there's many suggestions. But very rarely will you see someone say, why don't you use these tools to figure out who you are? And many people will never do that. As I look at my library, I realize that I also was searching for books that would help justify the way I thought and the way I felt. Never once daring to understand that the set of operating instructions I'd been given in life, that I'd cultivated, that and all of the various fractures that had healed and scarred over, had brought me to a crossroads where such manner of thought was no longer conducive to a healthy individual in any state of being. Not mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, for damn sure. And we all migrated from an area that told us somebody else will do it for you. Somebody else will be there to help you. Somebody else will get you through the tough times. There will be something else to lift your spirits and carry you forward. There'll be one set of footprints. Let me assure you, in those toughest of times in my life, when I looked around, there was nobody there as I hid in a closet doing drugs and wondering if I should shoot myself in the face. I found myself at a crossroads. The operating instructions that I'd been given, the scars that I had used with the fractures of this fallacious set of operating instructions began to fracture. They no longer served any useful purpose. It had become this huge, tangled nightmare of a roadmap to nowhere. And many of us have found ourselves in that very boat. I am at a huge, tangled mess, going nowhere, and quite likely going to die. The most difficult thing to do in Asatru is to get someone to take a look at this lore, at all the various books that are written, at all of the ideas which abound, and all of the wonderful conversations which are a struggle to assert some kind of mental dominance because of, well, I'm more right than you, than to get someone to stop and figure out where the fuck they are in the world and who they are before they begin to approach this without adopting ideas that only serve to operate in the same manner that brought us to a crossroads of destruction in the first place. Even I'm still learning that. My girlfriend told me that my first thought was wrong. A set of instructions I see her use all the time in dealing with me. My first thought is usually one of destruction. If you're not right, go ahead and smash it, destroy it, set fire to it, keep on moving. That's not the kind of manner of living that ever really yielded any true positive results for me. Yes, I've had times in various relationships that you could consider good. I've had times in my life when I've had a lot of money in the bank that I earned. I've had times in my life when I could look at the sun and smile and things were okay. But that set of operating instructions didn't quite work. So when I see people subscribing to ideas that fail to challenge the notion of who they are with regards to this spirituality, I see weakness and I see imminent failure. Now, having done this for over a decade now, I assure you I've watched it happen time and time and time again. People emerge, rise to the top with whatever fanciful idea that many people will subscribe to, and then they fail. Because we're not asking the pertinent question: who are we? We cannot subscribe to the idea that, well, we're Aryans, and we should have been National Social. We cannot. That shit ain't going to get you anywhere. You've already stepped back into the mindset of the individual's thought process that brought you to a crossroads of destruction again, with righteous indignation and desire to be more right, more special than the next guy, without understanding who we truly are. And this is the real challenge of building a foundation for this spirituality, is inspiring someone to want to be brave enough to look and ask the question, who am I? For Sigarth, it happens when he kills an ancient being because somebody else told him that was your enemy. And he followed through with it. He did what he said he was going to do. And then he realized, I've been suckered all along. I've been duped. I failed to ask why the proper number of times. And then he understands, he gets a taste of the blood of his enemy, and he understands the language of the birds, and a new world of understanding opens up to him, and he understands that that great coward Reagan is simply doing something, had him do something he could not. Such is the way of the world. If you don't know who you are, you will always fall for that kind of shit. Somebody will tell you something, and off we go. Now, the beautiful part of it is that we are not necessarily completely alone in it. And this is the ballad of the victory bringer. This is the ballad of the victory bringer. Now, a man can go his entire life without a woman, and a woman can go her entire life without a man. That's just the way we're built. We can operate independently of each other. But in the same manner that we cannot understand spirituality without understanding the divine within ourselves, so we might attach it to a divine image that we wish to emulate and become better and suggest and feel the joy and happiness that goes with it. When a man and women begin to understand and join that complementing, competing energy, there are truly new worlds that open up. And I've always said it, that when a man creates an environment where a woman is safe to express the beauty of who she is, you will find wonderful new aspects of that woman. But the same is true in reverse. When a woman creates an environment where a man is allowed to be who he is, where he accepts the response, even if he's Homer Simpson, the fucking doofus, the fool still accepts the responsibility of being a father and a husband. Even if he's a fool, the woman too will see new and wonderful things occur in her life. But you got to be brave enough to go through the fire. And sometimes that fire burns around our own hearts. The incorporation of the divine into our relationships, as Rig going through and visiting the great-grandparents, the grandparents, and the parents, this is a part of that process. When the couple invites the divine into their relationships, not to create guilds or classes of men, that's the simplistic horse shit that would help justify certain things written by Christian missionaries and lesser men. Because a truly inspired couple, a couple that see each other all the way, a couple that find that spirituality in their life, they've got something more, don't they? You're going to have a hell of a time fucking with her if he's anywhere nearby, and vice versa. Just the way it goes. And their children will probably grow up with a set of instructions that will carry them much further in life than the simple operating instructions that have failed so many of us. What does it look like? In the lore, it takes the shape of the runes, and the body of instruction Sigdrifa, the victory bringer, offers to Sigurd as they sat together next to each other on the bed that she laid in. That is the exact same scene that occurs 3 times in the Rigsthula, where the oldest son sits down next to a chosen wife or someone that they sit there and they talk and they discuss the night long, and the grandchildren of the 3 couples are what bear the names of individuals who can build a better society, a better world, a stronger world. Until finally, the last couple, the parents, the mother and the father, have a son who has a son. The son, Rig, steps out and calls him his own. And the grandson learns the language of the birds, again, like Sigurd, and how to use the runes. In fact, he taught the runes to his father. So here we have an individual repeating that very scene. So it's been repeated not once, but 3 times, 4 times in the lore. Maybe we ought to be paying attention to that instead of whether or not they're classes or guilds or whatever horse shit these retards come up with. The Dungeons and Dragons phenomenon. Yeah. You're not going to be a wizard shooting electric lightning bolts out of your hands. Now, that's not to say it hadn't happened, because I have seen some weird shit, but most people cannot walk down the street and bang a staff and shoot a lightning bolt. And most people walking around with a sword on their hip will get the shit slapped out of them. Unless there's some of those, the Chase's friends, that dude he would cut the shit out of you.
Start calling yourself a grand wizard and they'll call you a white supremacist.
Yeah, exactly right. You call yourself a grand wizard, they're going to call you a white supremacist. So 18 in the Sigurdrifa, stanza 18, she's teaching him the runes and what they mean in the world and where they come from. These last 2 stanzas, before it goes into another chapter of the tale, I wanted to read because they're important and bear repeating. Shaved off were the runes that of old were written and mixed with the holy mead. Now, the holy mead is Kvasir, the blood of Kvasir. A couple of drops we got as well, the holy mead in the well of Mimir. There could be any number of places that holy mead might originate. It could be the mead, the Einyanar drink. It could be the mead that inspires the poets and the warriors. It could be the things that Bragi brings about. It could be the words that Bragi speaks themselves, the holy mead, this inspiration, this fluid inspiration of life, Laguz in essence at work, and sent on ways so wide. So the gods had them, so the elves got them, and some for the Wains so wise, and some for mortal men. Some for mortal men, not all of them, some. Beach runes there are, birth runes there are, and all the runes of ale. So it's interesting that the ale runes and the birth runes are tied together. I mean, everybody gets drunk, gets knocked up. That's just kind of how it goes sometimes. One of those sets of operating instructions that may not necessarily have worked so well. And the magic runes of might. I should know, I've done it 3 times. Who knows them rightly and reads them true, has them, and here's the important part, the magic runes of might. Who knows them rightly and reads them true? Now, that's an important line when I'm talking about a set of instructions for your life. To read them rightly and read them true, that means we've got to be honest with ourselves about what they really mean. It also means we've got to be honest about ourselves with who are we? Who am I as an individual? What character am I portraying to the world so that they'll think I'm more important? And see, sometimes when we begin to think about that aspect of it, there's a real fear at the foundation of that thought process. Well, what if they don't think I'm that important? Good. That means it's the death of your ego, and you might be able to understand them rightly and read them true. People hate it when I talk about ego, but I've got the support of some of the greatest scientific minds of the 20th century suggesting that that idea, that perception of who we are that's been so greatly magnified and distorted upon social media is part of the reason we're in the fucking shit mess we're in. But he who knows them rightly and reads them true has them himself to help. And that occurs one other place, when Odin, hanging on the tree, pierced in the side, 9 days and nights, no water, no food, no friend. And at the opening of the doors of the halls of hell herself, he heard the songs of his ancestors and he picked up the crystalline might. He now has them himself to help. What was the image of Odin sacrificing himself to himself? He was ridding himself of that ego that caused him to lose a kingdom that he had built himself, like every man and every woman has gone through in life. Ever they aid till the gods are gone. That tells me I might want to keep a mindset where the gods stay at the forefront of it, so they're not gone from my life. Brunhild spake, now shalt thou choose, for the choice is given, thou tree of the biting blade. Speech or silence, 'tis thine to say, our evil is destined all. Sigurd spake, I shall not flee, though my fate be near. I was not born a coward to be. When your weaknesses or your choices are pointed out, and they're of such a grandiose nature that such a statement as to whether or not you're a coward or brave might be made, it might behoove you to understand who you are so you can make that, to read that true and say them right. Now, there is an original poem that concluded those two stanzas, and it's paraphrased in the Volsung saga. Sigurd said, nowhere is to be found anyone wiser than thou, and this I swear, that I shall have thee for mine, and that thou art after my heart's desire. She answered, I would rather have thee, though I might choose among all men. And this they bound between them with oaths. Now that's a fine set of lines for any wedding ceremony. I've incorporated them into the ceremony that I offer to couples that decide to tie the knot in front of me, to literally tie the knot. Because that really says a lot. Now the poem continues here. Thy loving word for mine will I win, as long as I shall live. So there's an understanding there that it's not a once and done kind of deal. You don't get to just hit it and have it forever. There's work to be done on the individual, because it's not like you're going to look inside yourself and find, oh shit, there's all of it right there in this little ball. Let me get rid of that ball. I'll be good. No. Some of these thought processes are so deeply ingrained into who we are and how we think and how we act and how we've been taught. It requires the kind of constant vigilance of a spiritual mindset to become aware of these things as they originate from our mouths. It comes to a point when you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to say them. And saying them causes you pain because it represents a failure. It represents an understanding of your inability or your choice to continue acting like an asshole. Sometimes it's necessary. Because you're not going to deal with people in this world who are even attempting the kind of rigorous and honest and thorough researching of who you are, like I'm suggesting occurs here. Most people operate blindly on the set of instructions their parents gave them, or their university gave them, or their coworkers give them, so that they might fit in. And heaven forbid you say anything different on social media, then you'd be ostracized. So now not only are they controlling you at the workplace, now they're controlling you in your home. And I wrote this probably a year or so ago. I think it's very pertinent. The truth is that this medium, which has us tapping away on our keyboards with our fingernails, is having the same effect on our world as Loki sailing a ship made out of the fingernails of the dead into the Battle of Ragnarok. Everyone has some kind of opinion, most of which originate from the uneducated, uninspired ranks of the insipid masses. Everyone notices the weaknesses they possess in others and proudly points it out as if it might mitigate their need to deal with it. And more I hear the plaintive cry of the weak begging for someone else to build their life for them, be it a god or a government. Man up on it, woman up on it. That's what's going on here between Sigurd and Brunhild. They're standing up to the responsibilities of being a man and a woman in each other's lives. Handle your business, build your future. And I will say that this trad mat social idea, well, those people, I see them idolizing on all of those pictures of World War II. Well, those were my grandparents. And I know the poison they instilled in those baby boomers they all like to make fun of. Might start rethinking some of that shit. Because I'm seeing here, I'm not seeing that. In fact, it's even mentioned at the beginning when she wakes up, when Sigrid cuts her free of the burning. Her father pricked her with a sleep thorn. And all of this traditional horseshit I keep seeing of these World War II, and I don't care if it's German or American or Soviet or communist or British or French, all these World War II, their fathers pricked them with a sleep thorn. Those men were dealing with pain we can't begin to imagine. They didn't just go do a tour in Afghanistan and come back. They fought for 4 long fucking years, 16 million men and women in service. And they came back and that pain slipped out. It seeped out in little unknown ways and shitty comments and assholic attitudes and bitchy fucking moments amongst their kids. And their kids grew up and they decided we don't like it. And they rebelled. And we had the age of Aquarius, where my generation was taught to have absolutely no respect whatsoever for authority. And then these millennials come along, my kids, and most of them are fucking retarded, whining in the street, expecting mommy and daddy to do something about it. Where's grandma and grandpa? Strong men build good times build weak men build hard times. We're dealing with the hard times right now. In the midst of all that, the fact that we know all of that doesn't mean a fucking thing when you're trying to work with the person of your heart. It is completely irrelevant. They're talking about things. They're not talking about the fate of the world here. They're not talking about the shape of the government. They're not talking about political ideas. They're talking about the very keys to the universe itself and releasing them free in each other. Right. Here's the first one she reads to him. The first I read thee, that free of guilt towards kinsmen ever thou art. No vengeance have, though they work thee harm. Reward after death shalt thou win. Quit getting butthurt about shitty comments and pay attention. I had to learn a long time ago. There's so many people running their stupid mouths about me that aren't qualified to carry my water bucket. It kills me not to go online sometimes and just tear them a new ass. I got somebody more important I need to be focusing on. In fact, I have several people in my lives that are more important than I need to be focusing on. Then second, I read thee to swear no oath, if true thou knowest it not. Bitter the fate of the breaker of troth, and poor is the wolf of his word. This is the thing I see most abused in heathenry, the breaker of the oath. Get some dickhead out here that's kind of posturing and preening, thinks he knows everything. Well, I've been around a long time, and I kind of have a handle on this, and I understand it. Haven't done anything, haven't read anything, haven't accomplished anything, probably works at a fucking 7-Eleven for all I damn know, but he's the king of whatever tribe he's going. And you need to swear an oath to him. Well, let me tell you something. If he's operating on that set of instructions and that's the limits of his success or the limits of his spiritual ideas, and you're going to swear an oath to that, if he's some kind of ex-con that's got out and he's like a 21st century forced monk kind of idea where he was sitting in jail and had to learn all these things, and you're going to swear an oath to that, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because as soon as you begin to understand this motherfucker's about as deep as the fucking head of a pin, you're stuck with it. You're left with no choice to say, I'm not tying my future to your horseshit. And then here we go. Horror is the wolf of his word. You're a snake. You're a worm. No, you're a fucking moron. But you swore an oath. Yeah, that goes both ways, doesn't it? Nobody ever wants to talk about that two-way street of an oath. Everybody says, well, you need to be give, give, give. When you're a king and you get some warriors, the oath underneath you, you're responsible for their well-being as they're responsible for defending your kingdom. Nobody ever wants to talk about that. But swear no oath if thou knowest it not. So if you don't know, don't do it. Then third I read thee, that thou at the thing shalt not fight in words with fools, for the man unwise a worse word than he thinks doth utter often. Believe you me, if there's somebody that could make the shittiest comment possible to have the most damage and hurt the actual inside of a person more than you can imagine, I promise you I can do it. Because I'm pretty astute at observation of people and their pain and seeing them and all these other things, and I can say the shittiest thing. That's not a good idea. And I've done it quite a bit. It's not the smartest thing for me to do because I'm Brian Wilton. I have a bigger obligation than just whether or not I can do that. I have a bullhorn. I have published works. I have all of these things. Maybe I shouldn't say that at a thing. Occasionally, though, there's a couple of dickheads that deserve it. Ill it is if silent thou art, a coward born men call thee, and truth mayhap they tell. Seldom safe is fame, unless wide renown is won. On the day thereafter send him to death, and let him pay the price of his lies. So this is an interesting little stanza. It has been improved by various editors, and it is clearly an interpolation, meaning in substance, it is dangerous to keep silent too long, as men may think you a coward. But if anyone taunts you falsely because of your silence, do not argue with him. But the next morning, kill him as proof that he is a liar. So sometimes you ain't got to just react immediately. Let people say what they're going to say. And when the opportunity comes, knock the shit out of them. Take care of business. We need men that will do that today. If Trump would have done that, we'd have been a hell of a lot better off, huh? But no. That silent majority of America, thanks, fuckers. Let's not be so silent anymore. Because we've sat here and let these mewling brats whine about everything and how unjust it is and how we should care. No, you're on your own. But here's the deal about being on your own. I just read last week a shitload of tools you have to go be as successful as you want to be as soon as you stop whining about being alone. Here we go. Then forth I read thee, if thou shalt find a wily witch on thy road, it is better go than her guest to be, though night enfold thee fast. Don't be a whore. You know, goddamn. If you're a dude, you don't need to fuck everything that walks by you. You know, that's just the way it is. Because it's always going to go south. You know, build something worth having. It's my biggest thing with that whole red pill community, talking about having a girlfriend, but make sure you're spinning plates. You know, have 5 or 6, 7 plates out there that you're spinning, the girls you're still talking to. So in case anything happens, you can insulate yourself from the pain of being a fucking failure and go find some other broad to hump. It says right here in my lore, it's better to go than her guest to be, though night enfold thee fast. If you want to go about your life sport fucking, you go right ahead. I promise you it begins to wear thin. Then fifth, eyes that see need the sons of men who fight in battle fierce. Often witches evil sit by the way, who blade and courage blunt. And I promise you, there are a few things that will break a man's spirit down than getting with someone who's a fishwife. Fishwife is the wife of the fisherman who, when he brings his fish in, his catch in for the day, she stands there and hollers real loud and screeches so everybody will pay attention to the fish that he's brought in. Usually fish stink. Fishwife, it's an old term. Nobody wants to be married to someone that is constantly berating them about some kind of bullshit. It will erode everything about who you think you are. And probably it's a good thing. So you can figure out a new set of instructions that works. So you don't pick a goofy bitch like that. But I digress. Then fifth, I read thee, though maidens fair thou seest on benches sitting, let the silver of kinship not rob thee of sleep, and the kissing of women beware. Once again, don't be a whore. Then sixth I read thee, if men shall wrangle and ale talk rise to wrath, no words with a drunken warrior have, for wine steals many men's wits. If you're ever in a bar about midnight, those guys that haven't been had any success with the kissing of women, or even finding an evil one, or an ugly one, or a fat one, they're going to start a fight. Just fucking damn near every time. That's just the way it is. That hasn't changed. That's human nature. And here it is, like 1,000 years old, probably older than that. That doesn't change. Those guys that are in the bar getting drunk, if they're not going to get laid that night, they're going to start a fight. Plain and simple. You can damn near set your clock by it in the bigger communities. Brawls and ale full off have been an ill to many a man. Death for some and sorrow to some, and full many of the woes of men. Hey, every day it happens somewhere. Some old boy gets clocked in the face. He falls down, hits his head, and he fucking dies. That guy's going, his life is destroyed. He's going for manslaughter, if not murder. Or he gets in a gunfight and shoots him. Road rage, it happens all the time in the South. Or there's a knife fight. Because they're fucked up. They're strung out. They've been up for a couple of days. They're high on some kind of pill, or they're drunk, or they're spun out. And look, and then they end up in a fight, hurting some man. Now he's going to probably sue your ass, or you're going to go to jail. You're going to have to deal with the court system, because now they want your money too. That's the only thing they really give a shit about. They don't care if you beat anybody up. They just want your fucking money. They got muni bonds to pay. Don't get drunk and go beat people up. If somebody comes to your home, you need to be man enough to stand at the door and handle your business. Period. I don't think you're much of a man if you can't. At least give them a tussle, ball bat or something. But don't go out and get drunk. Here's another thing too. If you're squared off with an old boy, chances are if you weren't drunk and you were working together on a job somewhere, working side by side, you probably end up being damn good friends. That is a potential ally or member of your tribe or member of your community that you might have been a valuable asset to your life. And now you just beat the shit out of him. I can't say that I really have ever thought about that until now, because I've done that a lot. But whatever. Then seventh I read, if battle thou seekest with a foe that is full of might, it is better to fight than to burn alive in the hall of the hero rich. Don't be a fucking bully. If you're going to tussle with somebody, do it with somebody that might whip your ass if you ain't giving it all you got. That's all that's saying. Don't be a bully. If you got to fight, make sure it's worth it. Don't just say, well, yeah, I knew he could do that. There's no glory in that. There's no victory in that. Now, I'm saying all this, and we forget where it starts. Where did it start? They just made an oath to each other, and she's saying, look, this kind of behavior, this is not the kind of shit that's going to move our relationship forward. If you're hanging out in bars and trying to dally with the girls and getting in bar fights every night, bitch, I'm out of here. As well she should be. So you dudes that want to talk about being masculine, you need to pay attention to that. Well, I'm going to go out with the boys. Oh, well, you're going to come home and beat your pud too. I mean, just plain and simple. That's basically what she's telling him. Then ninth, I read, thee burial render if thou findest a fallen corpse, of sickness dead, or dead of the sea, or dead of weapons of wounds. A bath shalt thou give them who corpses be, with hands and head shalt wash, wipe them and comb them ere they go in the coffin, and pray that they sleep in peace. You come across somebody that's given it their all and fall on their face and gave up the ghost, show a little fucking respect. You know, doesn't matter if you liked him or not. The guy went out there and did what he thought he needed to do, and he lost his life. I don't care if it's suicide by cop or suicide or falling off in a construction job site or anything else. Show respect for those people that have done their best in the world and are no longer with us. They've taught us something along the way. Show the respect. Be man enough to show the respect. At 10th, I read thee, that never thou trust the word of the race of wolves. If his brother thou broughtest to death, or his father thou didst fell. Often a wolf and a son there is, though gold he gladly takes. Listen, you've made an enemy, you better believe it's going to last for a minute. Hatfields and McCoys, that was a big old feud, lasted a long time. Same kind of shit applies, especially back then. If you pissed off the neighbor, if you know, don't count on the generosity of people you fucked over. Just put it that way and we'll figure it out. Battle and hate and harm methinks full seldom fall asleep. Wits and weapons the warrior needs, if boldest of men he would be. You can't sit on that couch and watch TV and be able to stand in the doorway and handle the business of whoever comes in your home. You need to spend a little bit of time getting your shit together. You need to make sure you know where everything's at. You need to know what you need to be able to do. Train, practice. Training is ritual for men, for women too, for that matter. Then 11th, I read thee, thou wrath, thou shun, and treachery false with thy friends. Not long the leader's life shall be, for great are the foes he faces. If you're going to step into the role of a leader, if you're going to be and it might even be just your house, it might only ever be just your home. If you're going to step into the role of a leader, you got to be honest. There's a reason that's at the top of the list of the 9 nobles: courage and honesty. I really hate using the term, but rigorous honesty is the only way to go. And if you're going to do something treacherous, you need to be able to stand there and take it. And that ain't easy to do. You'll get tired of it if you ever get the courage to stand there and handle it. You'll stop fucking doing it. And you might grow up to become an honorable man or an honorable woman. Because the world is full of people that will fuck you over and you're going to need a friend. And at the end of your days, when you take a good long look around, you're going to have kids and grandkids and great grandkids. There's going to be one person standing there next to you. And that's the one that shared with you the runes of life and shared the complementing, competing energies of masculine and femininity in each other. And that's how it goes. And I'm done. Thank you guys for joining in. Thank you everybody listening on YouTube. I hope you all enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Tomorrow is Monday. Go out there and grab it by the nose and whip its ass. And it'll be good. Hey, Renee, thank you for the books and the bookmarks. The kids love them. I think that's awesome.
You're welcome, Brian. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad you like them.
And I'm reading Jack Donovan's book right now, but I can't wait to check out Candace's book. And she's got an interesting cat, ain't she?
She is. It was really interesting book, and she had lots of historical references. So I think you'll really enjoy.
I will. I'll be checking that out. Sitting upstairs right now. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that.
You're welcome. I actually have a quick question if you weren't signing off right away.
You know, fire away and fall back. Let's see what you got.
In our chat, we've been tossing around the question about whether or not it's honorable for someone to commit suicide as far as the folk is concerned, as far as European lore. Is it dishonorable, or is it honorable, or is it just situation? It was suggested in chat that when you commit suicide, that you're cheating the Norns as far as Finnish lore is concerned.
I don't think we can cheat the Norns. You understand what I'm saying? I don't think we have what it takes to cheat the Norns. I think if it comes to that, I mean, we're going to run our race. That's just all there is to it. We're going to run our race. We don't know what that end is ever going to look like, and we don't know what all we're supposed to be doing here. We're going to play a part in a lot of people's lives as we move through this world. We don't know how it's going to stop. I don't think it's possible to cheat the norms. That would give us an enormous amount of authority and power. But the ability to take our own life is no different than a soldier leading the battle. It's no different than somebody dying in a car wreck. Because what you have to remember is, in all of those scenarios, there's an immense amount of emotional pain. There's an immense amount of suffering of some kind going on that they don't have the tools necessary to fix. So when we say they shouldn't do it because they're cheating something, and it is an awfully long-term solution to a short-term problem. I will say that. I wish we could, and that's part of what I'm talking about with knowing who you are, getting rid of that old set of operating instructions. I mean, I can't tell you that I didn't once or twice think about it in my life, but I happen to have a set of operating instructions that carried me a step past that. Somewhere along the way, I picked that up. And maybe it was just because I didn't want my children to be alone. But at the end of the day, hell, I mean, think about it, Renee. Let's say the guy was like, you know what, I sacrificed myself to my gods and took his life. Can we still call that a suicide, or did he sacrifice himself to his gods? Do you remember there's a scene in Vikings where they were doing sacrifices, and it was when it first came out. It was real popular, and this great big guy, he was a big asset. He was a big warrior, and they were short slaves or something like that. Guy didn't hesitate, stepped right up. I will be the sacrifice. So there was a mindset among our ancestors that the loss of life wasn't necessarily the end of things. It was simply a transition, a painful process of birth. Now, I think on the grand scale, for us to write these comments that say it's a wholesale condemnation of the act, I think we do ourselves a disservice and demonstrate our ignorance towards the process of dying and what that transition means. It tells me that we have an awful long way to go with regards to understanding the processes of the changes of the energy of life throughout the realms in existence. You cannot destroy energy, you can only change it. And everything that animates every part of us is electrical. You can't destroy that. You simply change it. So perhaps when we talk about suicide, perhaps we all need to reconsider our positions on such an issue. And that might change the world. Matter of fact, it probably would. It just is a hurtful thing to the people that love them to suddenly and unexpectedly not have them, and we didn't even know there was a problem. That's the real point of it, is that it is a glaring weakness in our understanding of each other that we wish we didn't have.
My psychology teacher was talking, we had this discussion in abnormal psych, and this was long before I was into or even knew what Asatru was, but...
And she found me and I fucked up her world.
And he was talking about, he told us this story about this man who left a suicide note to his family. It's going to be better off this way, this, and that. He had an insurance policy and they were going to be taken care of. And then at the end of the story, after we had all debated this in front of the class, then our teacher told us it was his son.
Oh, wow. So that's what I mean. We're talking about all of us developing a healthier understanding of what
Wow.
that means.
He was
Yeah.
talking about the quality of life that he was bringing to his children, staying here, being the way that he was, and then, you know, in the short term, it's painful for them, but in the long term, you know, those kids probably had a better life because he wasn't there.
You know, Robin Williams is the same way. Robin Williams diagnosed with what, Alzheimer's or something, was beginning to fail.
Early onset.
Yeah, and instead of burdening his family, which was probably a very happy family with that motherfucker running around, you know, he ripped the Band-Aid off the boo-boo. Yes, I'm a daddy still. But you know, our comprehension of death is still so skewed, and much of that is a scar of Christianity.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Who said that? Somebody who just got done being a Catholic.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a scar of Christianity that some of the stuff we're still learning. But that's a good question. I mean, that's a really good question.
Thank you for the perspective, especially the part about the sacrifice to our gods and goddesses. I mean, that would make that quite valid. And then anything else that you said in the story that you said, Shanae, it's just clear that there are reasons and valid ones. And the Christian church is probably what causes machinations and confusion to make us afraid of yet another form of death. That's all it is keep us in that trap of fear.
I will say one more thing. In the culture of the Teutons, there's a part of it where he talks about when the old begin to get infirm and no longer serve a purpose in the community, they will build a funeral pyre, and the man will go to the top of the funeral pyre, and a warrior from a neighboring village will come over and they'll fight to the death. So this is also a ritualistic suicide before he becomes a burden on his family, when he no longer serves, maybe he has lost a leg, or maybe he's got real bad arthritis or something, or maybe he's losing his mind, or maybe he's got syphilis so bad he can't control his bowels or some bullshit. But they build the funeral pyre and they fight to the death. And then they ignite the funeral pyre. The neighboring warrior is a celebrated hero for doing this great deed for the community. This is a ritualistic kind of suicide. We still see that play out today. When these guys get strung out on a couple of days and they're at their wits' end, it's over, and they get into a gunfight with the cops. Death, yeah, it's a death by cop. Now the cop has to carry that without the proper training and understanding of what he's been allowed to do. But be that as it may, it is something we need to learn about. It is something we need to pay attention to. It is a part of those operating instructions, which may not necessarily serve us any useful purpose anymore. It's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you, Renee.
You're welcome. Thank you for going over that.
I'm going to share this with the world and on YouTube, and we'll see what kind of comments that brings. I'm sure it's going to bring a few.
That's a good thing.
I think so too. So is the goat. But be that as it may, I'm going to get off here, Renee. You have a good night.
You too. Take care, you guys.
Okay, Thanks. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.